Hey guys, so today we are going to be doing water team building. Now, water might not be the strongest element in Tagatame or the Alchemist Code, however, in recent times it has gotten quite a few buffs with certain characters and has really started to come into its own. So, what does water bring to the table that the other elements don't? Well, water happens to have a lot of good mages in it, so you can build some really good magic teams in here. It isn't limited to just magic teams, however. There are good physical attackers, maybe a little bit less than the magic attackers, but overall, it's a very well balanced element. There is a lot of options on the table, a lot of damage types, and other than magic, it doesn't really index heavily into one particular type of build over another. So, leader skills. I'd probably say the best mixed leader skill is Ankh, with 30% HP, 20% water all damage, and 20% fire exploit. The one catch to this leader skill is obviously you need water skills in order to take advantage of it. Thankfully, a lot of water units do happen to have water skills on their kits and can benefit from this leader skill. The leader skill itself is a little bit squishy. With only 30% HP, expect to take more damage than you would otherwise. However, in most cases, except on the hardest maps, 30% HP isn't necessarily that bad, and it's very workable, and it gives you a lot of offensive pressure for a leader skill, and you are only going to find a similar offensive leader skill in Yoris, and only for physical attack units. So Yoris's leader skill is 20% HP, 30% physical attack, and 20% water all damage. She is probably going to be your best bet for a mixed leader skill unless you manage to Kaigen Ankh, because of the 20% HP and 20% all damage will apply to all units, and water just doesn't, I think, have really good HP options at the moment in global. There will be better HP options in the future, but for now, Yoris is probably one of the upcoming units that is going to give you a better bang for your buck in terms of leader skill. Now, Yoris and Shayna both do have the same leader skill, but Shayna is essentially poor man's Yoris. Yoris is a better unit in pretty much every way than Shayna. They both have a very similar niche that they fill, as in single target damage, like just single target charge up nuking. Um, it's just yours also has slightly better AoEs for what it's worth. She doesn't have many of them, but she does have them, as well as she's a faster unit and she has evade memes. Meanwhile, Shayna is, well, she has the Shura charge up, so she can output some serious single target damage, but that's about it, unfortunately. She doesn't really bring much else to the table, unfortunately. So if you can get Yoris up, I highly suggest you do. She is an excellent unit to have in your back pocket, and I've used her extensively, and that is why she is a 5/5/5 Kaigen for me. For the magic side of things, there's really two good options. The first one is Merlinus. Merlinus is a collab unit, and in Japan, she was on a 3-step guarantee, which means that it's really, really important that you get this unit when she becomes available if she has a guaranteed step. She is insanely powerful. She is a great unit to have. Even when she didn't have Kaigen, she could keep up with Kaigen units because she was just that good. Um, Her leader skill is 50% HP and 30% magic attack, and you are not going to be able to get all damage on Merlinus because her leader skill won't upgrade into that. I forget exactly what it upgrades into, but I know that her magic attack doesn't change, and it has to do with the way her defense changes. So overall, it's not a great Kaigen leader skill to have. However, her leader skill, her just base leader skill, is good enough to run. Your other option is probably going to be Ultima, who has 40% HP, and mine isn't quite there yet. I need like 13 more shards, but it's like 20% magic attack, if I remember correctly, and 10% count. 10% count leader skills are insanely rare in the game. This is obviously going to give you an advantage over the entire map, making your turn come around faster, for instance, and just helping you with any count-related task. However, you do give up some damage and some HP for that count, so there is a price to pay for it. I do think it is a worthy price to pay if you manage to 5/5/5 Ultima. I do not suggest getting his leader skill before his other two gates because it's a lot more important that he has those gates for his success as a unit than the leader skill itself. You can always just run Merlinus, and it probably will do more damage in the end. But it is still a very good option to have, and if you can afford to Kaigen him, you might as well. Honorable mention is Itsuki, who's going to be running a very similar leader skill to Jin with 40% HP and 20% water all damage when you max her gate 3. She's basically poor man's Ankh. She's going to give you a slightly tankier with less damage than Ankh leader skill, but it is a mixed leader skill through and through, and it is going to attack 5% evade. Unfortunately, that is only going to really help Yoris, because I can't really think of any other major evade memes in the element. So, now that we've gone over the leader skills, I'm going to go down the units one by one, why I raise them, exactly what they do, with a couple of honorable mentions for things that I never got around to raising, because obviously AP is limited, so you do have to pick and choose what you want. So, Itsuki. I'm just going to tell you guys this right now. Itsuki is going to be a bad unit until she gets her job plus next Valentine's Day. That is very far away. Is she worth farming right now? Probably not. Is she worth making sure that you can gate 5 her when Valentine's Day comes around again? Most definitely. She is insanely good now. She has a lot of utility because the spy kit itself has a lot of utility. With veils and magic attacks on physical attack units, it's a really nice kit, and especially because the Spy Plus for Itsuki fixed a lot of the Spy's weaknesses and like skill counts and stuff. Itsuki has tons of teleport. She's just a very versatile unit that can do a lot of damage, and I really... I might be a little biased here because Itsuki is one of my favorite units in the game and is probably my favorite water unit, but yeah, she's very good now in Japan, but she's not going to be great in global, so that is the major disclaimer. I do think that if you have the spare AP, you should farm her and get her ready when you have time. Merlinus. This is the quintessential water unit in my opinion. She is arguably, if not the best water unit in the game, at least for me anyways. She doesn't necessarily need an extensive Kaigen. I don't think her gate 5 is necessarily worth the extra frags, and her gate 3, I should raise that up to 3 for the extra speed, but her leader skill is pretty garbage, her Kaigen leader skill, so you don't really need that either. All of her gear is pretty much free. Ignore the Water Vita ring on there right now. You can just run her VCR off of her free Nenso with her free staff on her 3-step guaranteed banner. There's really no reason you shouldn't get this unit when it becomes available, assuming you do get the 3-step guarantee. She basically plays like a water battle mage of sorts. She uses Drain Dimension that has a water base instead of a elementless, and then she has a wide range of attacks with things that like reduce cooldown or reduce cast time, among other things. Some interesting AoEs for sure, and she can charm with her weapon ability. But in general, this is a great unit to have. I highly suggest getting her. Unagi. Now, Unagi is a bit of a mixed bag. Unagi, the benefits of Unagi is she can do a lot of damage. The downside is she is very slow and has a hard time getting around the map. I did raise her. I can't necessarily say that the time was super well spent. She is a decent unit. If you like Unagi, you can make her work. She specializes in a Guts meme. It's not quite Black Killer tier level, but if you can get off 2 attacks, she will get Permaguts for a turn until she can release a giant AoE the following turn. So you can use her like that. Her Axe Warrior is actually a very good job, and if you give her the right support, she is going to need clock up. She can do work. I don't necessarily think she's a great unit to have, but she can add a lot to the team, and she is... Earlier on, it was harder to get physical attack water units. She was a physical attack water unit, which is why I raised her. That is your decision to make. I've already been over Yoris for the most part, so I'm going to make this brief. Huge single target DPS, evade, quick, you know. You guys know what Yoris does by now. Just imagine what she does in global, just significantly better. And you've got the Japan Yoris. Ultima. So the thing about Ultima is he is very versatile. He can be run as either his Sage or his Job Plus. I rarely do use him as his Job Plus, however, most of his utility is on that kit. But he also has access to the Water Enchanter, and this is a really big deal because the way I like to run him is with Sage main and Water Enchanter sub, so he can support the team and do damage. He gets one AoE off with his weapon ability and slows a boss down, and then can buff up a bunch of people while the boss is enjoying its 80% slow. Um, he does have another AoE on his limited VCR from his limited Nenso. It's unfortunate, but he does have a relatively cheap Nenso to get that is really good for him as well. Overall, a great unit to have and can be run easily on either a physical attack or magic attack team. Levena. So, Levena is one of my favorite units in the game, but I do have to say she does have an issue hitting the numbers. However, what she lacks in damage, she makes up for with her absolutely insane range, and if you do manage to max limit break her Nenso and get her VCR and everything, and get her some buffs, she can output about somewhere between 7 to 10k damage on a fire unit by taking advantage of a lot of multipliers. This is a decent amount of damage, especially considering she can shoot like halfway across the map. I forget what her range is, but it's pretty nuts. You are going to have to Kaigen her if you want her to be usable. I don't know if she can run Roxy's guns anymore after she gets her VCR, but before she gets her VCR, I suggest running Roxy guns and Battlefield Drama. I just personally think that's the best option. Doesn't necessarily mean it is, but I do like that setup personally. She does make a good addition to any water team, especially a Lust Water Mage team, because she has a Nenso that will benefit Lust Water Magic units with plus 16 accuracy, and that's obviously a limit break 4, but this is a really big deal for Ultima because Ultima can't hit the broadside of a barn without Fiona's Fiona's VCR. So with that in your party, you might be able to skip the Fiona VCR and still be able to hit things with Ultima, which is a pretty big deal. As well as just mages in general not having great accuracy. So it's definitely a good. Levena is definitely a great unit to have. I don't necessarily think she is mandatory though. Klima. So this is a mandatory unit. You should raise every forecaster you own. Period. Now I never raised Lily, but that's just kind of because she never got on the hard quest list. But Lily is the weakest of the forecasters. Now in Japan, I feel like you guys in Global might run them a little differently, but in Japan we highly focus on the wind nuke. You should be running these with as much HP as possible and just going around and wind nuking things. Klima does have a little bit of a gimmick on her rain, which makes her really good for clearing maps because her master ability will up the damage on her rain. But in general, she's just going to be a wind nuke forecaster with some support. Great unit to have. An adorable winter outfit. And she is a great unit on any team. Don't forget that forecasters do have overclock on them, as well as an AoE heal and regen, among other things. Ankh. So, there are a couple ways to run Ankh that can make him useful in a party. In general, Ankh is going to be your primary damage dealer until he runs out of skills. I personally do not run the Snowball on Ankh, preferring rather to run his Faust passive with Overdrive because his Faust is what gets upgraded with his Kaigen, Gate 2. And Overdrive is obviously Overdrive, and what this does is it means that Ankh does absolutely crazy numbers right out of the gate. He has access to typeless damage as well as pierce damage, so you can equip the pierce, charge up armor if you wish, or you can run him really any way you choose. He's very versatile. You might be able to run him as a pirate, but I don't see why you would when Shenmei is around. And let's face it, Shenmei is Shenmei. I got a soft spot for Shenmei. I'll go over Shenmei soon. Lofia. So, I hate to break it to you guys, but Lofia just isn't the top tier water support that she used to be. However, The one thing that Levena can do extremely well is not die. I swear, she's tankier than my melee units. Like, seriously, she does not die. Um, and she has access to this piece of raid gear here, which I haven't gone over yet, and I'll do a video on later, but just know that that basically makes her even harder to kill. Among other things, she has self-built-in regen, and she has, obviously, the chrono kit, and she is a good option for overclocks if you wish to run them. I highly suggest, if you want to overclock, to run Levena instead of a forecaster if you need it explicitly for overclocking. Forecaster is more like damage first, overclock second, while chrono is overclock, overclock, overclock with maybe some quickens added in. Levena does have her own Nenso, which is going to help buff Levena, so running them in the same team definitely benefits Levena a lot. One thing you'll notice is that there's a lot of good Nensos that are going to go through here. It's Lust Water is not quite on the same tier as Desert Wind, but the concept is very similar, where they've got a lot of Nensos that can benefit each other, and they're very easy to run on the same team. Lamia. Well, guys, they did it. Gumi made Lamia good. Unfortunately, you basically need her Nenso and her VCR and the upgraded Job Plus. The good news is that it's not a limited Nenso, and VCRs will get easier to get in the future. Is she the best water unit? No. Is she a good water unit to have? Definitely. There aren't a ton of water pierce units. Well, there are more now that we have Black Killer Longinus around. But in general, Lamia is a really good unit to have. She's a 4-star, and she basically fights like a 5-star that is relatively good. I do suggest raising her, because she's easy to get. Shenmei. So, Shenmei was pretty much garbage right up until she got her JE, and when she got her JE, she basically went straight to SS. She's a great unit to have. The pirate kit, there just aren't that many that can utilize it, but one thing you do have to remember is that the AoE is capable of reducing an enemy's ability to inflict status on you. It's basically like a reverse veil, where instead of protecting your units from a status, you basically make your enemy incapable of inflicting status, and that's a relatively big deal, because it means that you can sometimes forego a veil if you know what you're doing and you target the right units with that. I will say that I have used Goals Kit in order to beat bosses that I had issues with status with, and Shenmei is probably capable of doing something very similar. Her Gate 2 is going to up her physical attack a lot, so she will be able to hit the numbers that she needs to be relevant. She never will be as good as Goal is, but she is a great unit to have, and since she's such an old unit in Global, you guys shouldn't have any problem getting her up and through her Kaigen. And once again, Shenmei is Shenmei. I got a soft spot for Shenmei because she was probably my first good global unit, and she carried me through the original run of Rahu Plus, which ran on like my second week of playing in global. And for a lot of the people who are still around and did the original Rahu Plus when it came to global, and remember like strats like running Feng Li and among other units to try to beat that stage, Shenmei was my tank because she didn't die to all of the plants, and it was a fun time, and Shenmei got me through a lot in the early game, so I want to make her good, which is why I'm farming her now. Is she worth getting? Definitely. Shayna, once again, poor man's Eurus. You guys know what Shayna does. I really don't have to explain it, and she hasn't really had any changes that would make her different from in Japan from her global self. Alright, so how far are we now? Alright. Ranger. So, Ranger is kind of a meme unit, but she is actually really good for a free unit, and that's pretty much all I got to say on her. Run her Ranger with Lyle Bow, and you'll get much better results than running her unique. Guarantee it. Lisbeth, let's wait for her job 3 in Chapter 6. Maybe she'll get good. Until then, you might as well just raise her up for now. Micasa. Unfortunately, she is a bit of a letdown as far as the Attack on Titan units go. She is pretty strong. She's just not as good as other water units. She does have a good leader skill for raiding, however, with 40% HP, 40% attack, and 20% extra damage to units with the giant tag. and that basically includes all raid bosses as well as Diane, I believe. But you probably won't be fighting Diane anytime soon. She is a pretty good unit to have. If you happen to luck into her, she might be worth raising. Otherwise, I don't think she's a chase unit. Okay, so Annika, you need level 75 Annika is mandatory. If you don't have a level 75 Annika, you should be aiming for a level 75 Annika. She is basically mandatory for Neo Vita, I want to say 107. Otherwise, she's just the like best support in water right now. Basically the difference between her and Lofia is just in general, she has a veil. And she basically does everything Lofia does except for the overclock, but she has a veil. And if she wants to, she can run overclock. She's just a good unit to invest in if you want to raise a water support. I don't have much else to say about her. She really isn't that different in Japan than she is in global. Alright, honorable mentions that I never raised. So, this is for you, Det. This is Kevin with his Nenso. I'll just throw his Nenso on right here to make that just a little bit saltier because I'm pretty sure he didn't pull this. And I got mine from a free daily pull instead of the Moa Nenso that I really wanted. But, is Kevin good? I really haven't messed around with his Job Plus, to be honest. However, the one thing I will say, all of the units recently that have gotten a Job Plus with a limited Nenso have been good. Unfortunately, he is cursed with the fact that he is a Telekine, and that does kind of limit his ability to last into the map. Is he a good unit? He's probably good to have. Is he a mandatory unit? Unfortunately, no. Sorry, Det. This one is for the Discord. Zen is not good. Sorry. Maybe he'll get good eventually, but not now. Tsubaki's gonna love hearing that. Black Killer Longinus. She's good, but only with Kaigen. Basically, she's not worth sharding. If you get her, I just let her sit for a while. She's just not worth it. Dart is actually pretty legit for a free unit. I never raised her myself, however, I know a couple people who have. She's not going to be your best unit in the game, however, she is pretty legit. And, Wren. So you guys will be getting Wren with Water Babble. No, he is not linked to, Envy Babble. He is a Water Babble unit, and he basically shows up in a ton of different stories throughout Babble. So, Water Babble is where you're going to get him. Is he a good unit? Well, kinda. Is he like a good unit? Yes, he is a good unit. Is he a top tier unit? No, he's not. And it mostly comes down to having a poor scaling because they gave him BM scaling. Maybe they'll go back and give him Sharon scaling because Sharon basically got the same job just with physical attack scaling instead of BM scaling, which is physical attack, dex, and speed, which obviously just does not scale as well. As far as future units go, I keep your eye on Tedis, because once she gets Necro, things might change. Until she gets Necro, it's hard to say. But once she gets Necro, things might change. And I think that's really all I have to say on water right now. There are a couple water units that I do not have. Julia is a really good unit to have, but she is a Genesis unit, so she's incredibly hard to get a hold of. Diane is from the Seven Deadly Sins collab, and the Giant, obviously, for those of you who haven't seen the anime or know who Diane is. She is a good unit, but is she chase-worthy? Not with the banners we had. Is she good? Yes. Just the banners, man. Anyone who was around to see those banners back then knows how bad they were. And I think that's it. Pretty much everything else here isn't really worth mentioning to my knowledge. So let's go ahead and hop into some examples of team building. I actually sacked Zane's Nenso pretty recently, so I've got Zane's new outfit, and I got the Seda Nenso too. I just thought I'd point that out. I was pretty happy about that. Get rid of the Saga team. Okay, so we're going to start with Ankh here, because Ankh is probably... Okay, let's stop clicking everywhere. Ankh is probably my go-to leader skill for water most of the time. So, the other unit I always like to run is Merlin, just because she's so freaking powerful. I don't have to run her if I don't want to, but in general, if I'm going for like a power setup, maybe add in Ultima and Itsuki. So this is probably my most powerful setup. I can swap out Ultima and Eurus as I please. They both do a great job. One does some things better than others. Ultima obviously is good at AoEs, while Eurus is good at single target DPS. So they both have different jobs. But in general, Itsuki brings the utility along with the Veils. Merlin has good AoE with magic damage. Ankh has really good physical damage along with minor AoEs, and Eurus or Ultima kind of round out the team based on what I need at the time. And I really for my basic team, it's these three. And then I basically add in the last units as I need them for whatever I need them for. Like if I need a support, I'll add in Lofia probably. If I need long range, maybe Levena. But in general, this is my core. You don't have to run this core. It's not necessarily even meant to work super well with each other. These are just really powerful units that can curb stomp most content. If there is a certain floor and like Neovita that I need to run, I will curtail my build, I will curtail what I need to that specific floor. In general, though, if I run Ankh as my leader, I'm just going for just sheer deeps. Just murder my opponent faster than they can kill me, in general. So, if I'm running a magic team, I'd probably go with these two, and I'd probably also go with Levena, because I do like Levena, and she does bring some things to the table. My Levena has a lot of investment, though, so your mileage does vary. And then, really, the last one's going to come in is, like, maybe I want a forecaster, maybe I don't want Levena and I want a forecaster, and I want a support. Really, Merlinus and Ultima, though, are going to be your magic core. Everything else is basically what do you have and what can you fit into the team, but these two are going to be your core magic units. However, there is one thing we need to talk about, and that is the Waterlust team. So, there are a lot of Waterlust units, and I am just going to pull them up, and I think that's all the ones that I have raised that are good. Sorry, Elizabeth. Yeah, so this is really what the Waterlust team is going to look like. And obviously, Eurus is just not going to get a great leader skill, or Ultima is not going to get a great leader skill. Really, you run Ultima for the HP and the count, and you run Eurus if you want to do extra damage. I do normally suggest running Ultima as a leader in this particular scenario, just because I highly value HP above other stats. If you have to run an all Lustberg team, this is probably what I'm going to run. One thing I will want to point out is, if I remember correctly, Feng Li is a part of Lustberg, and he does have a job plus that makes him relatively powerful. He is an option that's worth running, but I'd have to double check and make sure he's a Lustberg unit, because I do not remember off the top of my head. Actually, I can check that right now, because I can just do this. And Lustberg. Okay, here we go. So that's definitely a lot easier. So yeah, Sophia is another option. She does have a job plus, but she is going to be more support oriented, obviously. I never actually went and tested that job plus though, so if anyone who plays Japan has played with Sophia plus, if you want to leave something in the comments section about exactly how she plays and how good she is, feel free to. Unfortunately, there aren't too many other options. It's not quite as powerful as Desert Wind, obviously, but it is a very good option to have. Right, so basically, the way this works out is like anything else. You build your teams based on what you need on the map. let's say you need AoE, right? Well, AoE would be something like Merlin, Ultima. These are mage AoEs. Levena I actually count as AoEs because the majority, if not all of her skills pierce, which means that if you can actually hit like 5 or 6 enemies depending on how they're lined up with Levena, which is relatively nice and convenient, especially because you can plant her AoEs on her sub in certain places to hit enemies in weird ways that you wouldn't actually expect it to clip through, but it does. However, what if you need physical attack AoEs? Let's say you don't want magic, right? So let's clear that board off right there. What if you don't want magic? Well, we can run a physical team with yours as the leader, and you can run Lamia and Shenmei as AoE physical attack. And don't forget that Shenmei is pirate, which means that her AoE is typeless as well, which means it can get through any kind of damage modifier defense. I wouldn't necessarily say this is great AoE per se, but it doesn't scale off of magic. So if you're on a map that debuffs magic for some reason and you still get to keep your luck, you can still launch AoEs with Klima and be fine, although she doesn't have many of those thunder AoEs she can launch. Another physical attack AoEs would be Unagi, obviously, because of that skill that she gets on, I believe, her Titan JE for Warrior. And actually Gunner, because she has that 5 diamond with her Ranger, is another good physical attack AoE. And Micasa, her AoEs center around her, but she is still capable of doing AoEs. Right, so there are just a lot of options that are available for water teams depending on what you need. We have upfront damage with like Ankh, and if you really need upfront damage, you can use Kevin. I don't suggest it, but you can use him if you need upfront damage immediately. We have good supports, good buffing options, just all around. It's a very well-balanced element in Japan. It's definitely not the most powerful, but you will need it for some maps, and it is highly suggested that you work on your water team, especially because it is kind of weak. Water remains weaker for a lot longer than most of the other elements, so you're really going to want to work on your water units in the meantime, because the content isn't really based on what the state of the units of the elements are in, but rather what the state of the game is in as a whole. So basically the game is normally balanced around whatever is strongest in a sense. So if one element is doing significantly better than the others, the other elements might have issues in their own maps, because it's like, well, if this element can do that, why can't other elements can? Because, you know, game balance and whatnot. Not to say that's how they approach their game balance, but it's just something I generally feel. Like when I originally did my original Neo Vita 101 run, Dark was powerful, but it was had kind of fallen off a bit by then. There just weren't a ton of good new Dark units that have been added to the Kaigen pool yet. And if you had all of your Dark units Kaigen, you could easily do the floor, but there were other floors that felt easier to do just because of where they were at the meta in the time that content was released. So that's just my 2 cents on that. Definitely you're going to want to work on your water box just as you'd want to work on any other box. I hope I've given you a good idea of what units you are going to want to look to get and prioritize. I will say that Lamia came out, Lamia J Plus upgrade as well as her Nenso came out around the time of the Attack on Titan collab, which I believe was in August in Japan. Shenmei came out over the summer, and she was paired with Golmaraz with her JE, as Golmaraz got his Kaigen. Ultima is going to be good as soon as he gets his Kaigen, as well as Joris. Those are going to be your early 2 powerhouses. Klima, unfortunately, only got her Kaigen in December, so you guys have a long way to go with that, because she is linked to the Christmas event. Lofia is linked to Lust Babel, which is the final Babel that was created, which means you guys still got a ways to go, unless they do them in a different order. However, so far it looks like all the babbles have been in order, and I would expect them to stay in order. Merlinus is going to come whenever her collab comes. Itsuki is Valentine's Day. Unagi is actually going to be getting her upgrades a lot earlier than most of the other water units, which is why she was SS and Taurus tier list for a long time. It was less that Unagi was great, but more like everything else in water sucked. So if you already have gotten your Unagi raised, you'll be able to benefit from her being a relatively strong water unit for quite a while. Same with Shayna. Shayna got her Kaigen incredibly early compared to a lot of other water units, and because of that, she was an early powerhouse. She has fallen off a lot since then, though. Levena, she kind of has just gotten gradually more powerful with her Kaigen, and then got gradually more powerful with her Nenso. I wouldn't necessarily advise raising her super hard until you start getting closer to her Nenso, which is probably going to be about Christmas time. And that is pretty much all I have to say on the subject. Don't forget that the Lust Nensos do work well together, so you do kind of want to at least try to get like maybe 2 or 3 Lust members in the same team when you're running water, and you can benefit tremendously from that, but obviously that's not something you have to do. Water does have a lot of great leader skills to utilize, so you don't even really need any Nenso leader skills in Japan in order to make water a successful team. So, thanks for watching as always, guys, and I hope to see you next time.